Hey folks, this is Rhykker with the Diablo 3 Season 25 Demon Hunter build guide. This guide is for the Shadow's Mantle set, which got buffed this patch, bringing it up a whole tier in power, and it is the starter set for Demon Hunters in Season 25. Even before this buff, Shadow's set has always been one of, if not the best starter set in the game. The build is super easy to gear and performs really well early on in the season. And now in Season 25, it's better than ever. So in this video, we're going to go over the gear, the skills, and the playstyle that you want to rock this build. The gameplay footage you're seeing in the background is from the Demon Hunter god himself, Wudijo, and you can follow along with the written version of this guide on maxroll.gg, link in the description. That'll be kept up to date once Season 25 goes live. And there you can look at all the different variants of this build for Nephilim Rifts, Speed Greater Rifts, pushing, and group play. In this video, we're going to focus on the Speed Greater Rift version because you're going to be rocking this build at the start of season. You're going to be grinding speed content, helping farm up those paragons, farm up those items, farm up the more powerful builds that you will settle into eventually. Or, you know what, if you want to just stick with this, that works too. So let's start by taking a look at the gear, beginning with the Shadow's Mantle set. The 2-piece bonus. While equipped with a melee weapon, your damage is increased by 6,000%. 4-piece bonus. Shadow power gains the effect of every rune and lasts forever. And the 6-piece Impale deals an additional 75,000% weapon damage to the first enemy hit, and now new to Season 25, 25,000% to subsequent enemies. Now the weapon we're going to want to use with this build is Carlay's Point Dagger. The damage of Impale is increased by 375%, and it returns 15 hatred if it hits an enemy already impaled. We'll also take the Holy Point Shot Quiver. Impale throws 2 additional knives and deals 100% increased damage. Then in the cube, we're going to want to take the Dawn One-Handed Crossbow. Reduce the cooldown of Vengeance by 65%. We want to maintain permanent uptime on Vengeance. Tremendous buff for the Demon Hunter. There's a reason why almost every Demon Hunter build uses this. Now, outside of that, for the speed version of this build, we're going to want to be maximizing our damage here. So we're going to take Focus and Restraint. This is the Bastion of Will set, the 2 rings that when you hit with a resource generating attack or primary skill, you deal 50% increased damage for 5 seconds. And then when you hit with a resource spending attack, you deal an additional 50% increased damage for 5 seconds. It's very easy to maintain these buffs. You just need to equip a generator skill. Typically in the pushing variant of Shadows, you would not have a generator equipped, but for us to maximize our damage, we're going to squeeze one in. And because we're working in a generator, we'll also take the Wraps of Clarity. Your hatred generators reduce your damage taken by 50% for 5 seconds. That's 5 seconds for Wraps, 5 seconds for Focus and Restraint. We want to pop our generator. How often, folks? Once per 5 seconds. Next, we'll take a Squirt's Necklace Amulet. While not taking damage, damage dealt is increased by up to 100%, and damage taken is increased by up to 50%. We'll also want to take 2 pieces of the Captain Crimson set, the belt, and then either the pants or the boots. The 2-piece bonus gives us some life per second, but more importantly, 20% cooldown reduction. We also get 20% resource cost reduction, and then the 3-piece bonus makes us deal more damage based on how much cooldown reduction we have, and makes us take less damage based on how much resource cost reduction we have. Then of course, we take in our cube a Ring of Royal Grandeur. This reduces the number of items needed for set bonuses by 1. This is how we're able to equip 5 pieces of Shadows, 2 pieces of Captain Crimson's, and still get the 6 and 3-piece bonus of each respectively. Now, the Ring of Royal Grandeur is not something that can drop anywhere. You can only get it from bounty bags. Act 1 and Act 4, but Act 4 bounty bags have a more dilute pool of items, so do Act 1 bounty bags to get the Ring of Royal Grandeur. Then lastly in the cube, we'll take St. Archu's Gauge. The first time an elite pack damages you, gain an Absorb Shield for 150% of your max life for 10 seconds. Why? This helps us maintain our Squirt's Necklace buff. As long as we're not taking damage means as long as we're not losing health. If it's just our shield taking damage, we still maintain that Squirt's buff. Something else that can help maintain that Squirt's buff is to take the Molten Wildebeest Gizzard Legendary Gem. you gain life per second, and then after not taking damage for 4 seconds, you gain an absorb shield for 200% of your total life per second. So now we have more absorb shield, more ability to take damage without losing our squirts buff. As an alternative, if you don't want to fuss too much about losing your squirts buff, instead of a Molten Wildebeest, you can take a Bane of the Powerful. This makes you deal 20% increased damage for 30 seconds after killing an elite pack. And again, if you're doing speed content, this is a buff you should be able to maintain all the time. Same thing with the St. Archew's Gauge. And then also gain 15% increased damage versus elites and take 15% reduced damage from elites. But again, another alternative, you can swap out the St. Archew's Gauge if you want for an Aquila Cuirass. While above 90% primary resource, all damage taken is reduced by 50%. So you can decide which of these defensive buffs are you able to maintain. If you're not consistently maintaining 90% primary resource, don't bother taking an Aquila. If you're not able to kill an elite pack in 10 seconds, then maybe don't take St. Archew's Gauge. Another option for the cube, if you feel you're running out of discipline too much, you can take the Chain of Shadows. After using Impale, Vault costs no resource for 2 seconds. For our other legendary gems, we'll take a Bane of the Trapped. One of the best legendary gems in the game. Huge damage buff against controlled impaired enemies. And at level 25, it unlocks an aura that crowd controls enemies. And then Zay's Stone of Vengeance. Damage you deal is increased by 16% for every 10 yards between you and the enemy hit, up to 80% at 50 yards. 50 yards is half a screen distance, meaning if enemies are at the edge of the screen, that's the max damage buff you can get against them. And then also a 20% chance on hit to stun the enemy for 1 second. For our regular gems in chest and pants, we'll take diamonds for more toughness. If you really want to maximize your damage, you can take emeralds instead. And then in our weapon and helm, we're going to take soul shards, the Season 25 mechanic. Full details on soul shards can be found in this video here. For our weapon shard, we're going to want to take the Essence of Anguish. Every time you deal poison damage to an enemy, you increase your cooldown reduction and move speed by 2.5%, while your damage received is increased by 5% for 10 seconds, max 10 stacks. So that's going to be a nice movement speed buff, and 25% more cooldown reduction will synergize nicely with our Captain Crimson's. Now you might be wondering, well, hold on now. Poison damage. Demon Hunters don't deal poison damage. Well, this is one of the very rare instances in the game where your weapon damage type actually matters. If you roll poison damage onto your weapon, and not just if you want to use this gem, you must roll poison damage onto your weapon, then this counts for triggering the Essence of Anguish. At rank 3, you unlock a second random attribute on your soul shard, and the one we'll want is when you kill an enemy, you deal the damage done by the death blow to all enemies within 25 yards. This will help create those chain reactions where you blow up one enemy and then the whole pack just blows up. Area damage has always been a weakness of this build. It excels at single target, and so players have been finding ways to spread damage around to help shore up one of the weaknesses of this build, while still letting it excel at its greatest strength, killing elite packs. For the Helm Shard, we're going to take the Sliver of Terror. Your cooldowns are increased by 25%. Yikes, that's bad, but it's counteracted by the Essence of Anguish. For every skill on cooldown, you take 12.5% reduced damage and deal 25% increased damage. We're going to have a few skills on cooldown and benefit from a very nice damage buff and toughness buff as well. For its rank 3 power, we're going to take your attack speed and crit chance are increased by 7% for each skill on cooldown, further ramping up our power. Now we'll go over exactly what we want on every piece of gear, but first we'll take a look at the skills. For our main attack, we're going to take Impale, Chemical Burn. Chemical Burn historically has not been the optimum rune for Impale, and technically you can still take the Cold rune, for instance, over Penetration as a viable option. But now Fire is also viable because with Season 25, the devs fixed a bug that prevented the Chemical Burn 500% weapon damage from benefiting from the 6-piece damage buff of the Shadow set. So it used to be that you would throw an Impale knife, it would deal 750% weapon damage as normal, plus the extra 75,000 from the 6-piece Shadows, and then the extra 500 from the Chemical Burn. Big whoop. What's 500 after 75,000? Now the 500 also has another 75,000 tacked onto it. Burn, baby, burn. Next we'll take Vengeance, Dark Heart. We'll have 100% uptime on Vengeance, which gives us 40% increased damage, and the Dark Heart rune gives us 50% damage reduction. We'll take Vault, Tumble, great mobility skill, and Tumble basically gives us half off. After using Vault, if you vault one more time within 6 seconds, that next vault will be at 50% resource cost. Next we'll take Companion, Wolf Companion. This gives us a skill to have on cooldown, which helps with our Sliver of Terror, and its active ability will give us a 15% damage buff for 10 seconds. You'll want to pop this whenever you go engage an elite pack. We're taking Shadow Power and benefiting from the effect of every single rune thanks to the Shadow set. You don't actually have to select a rune, you can if you want to, but it's more for the aesthetic of what Shadow Power effect you're gaining. So with Shadow Power, we're gaining life per hit, which is increased by 25% of your life per kill. The Nightbane rune slows enemies that are near us. Blood Moon doubles the amount of life per hit we have. Well of Darkness reduces its resource. Big whoop, it's going to be constantly active anyway. Gloom gives us 35% damage reduction, and Shadow Circle gives us 30% extra move speed. Then lastly, we need to take a generator. The exact generator we take doesn't really matter. It's literally just there to maintain your buffs, but here we'll recommend Bolas Freezing Strike. This will give enemies a 50% chance to be frozen for 1 second. For our passives, we'll take Tactical Advantage. Whenever you use Vault, you gain 60% move speed for 2 seconds. We're zooming here. Ambush, you deal 40% additional damage to enemies above 75% health. Huge damage buff at the start of an engagement, and because our fights don't last long, Ambush is really useful. Cull the Weak, increased damage against slowed or chilled enemies by 20%, pairs really well with our Bane of the Trapped. And Thrill of the Hunt. Enemies hit by your Hatred Spenders are slowed by 80% for 2 seconds. This is what's going to keep our Bane of the Trapped and Cull the Weak triggered no matter how far away we are from enemies. If you really want extra safety, you can take Awareness, sub out one of those passives for it. If you're to sub one out, I would sub out Tactical Advantage. That's the only one that's not contributing damage. And then outside of that, the playstyle is pretty straightforward. You shoot your Bolas once per 5 seconds. You speed along looking for elite packs. You are an elite hunter. You are not full clearing here. Run over to an elite pack and kill it. If that elite pack is in the middle of a nice group of monsters, even better. You could also, if you just run into a nice group of monsters with no elite, you can take some shots, take a few of them down, but definitely don't stop to kill stragglers. You're going for those priority targets. Use shred elites. Don't waste all that extra single target damage on those little monsters that die in one hit. You want to be maintaining those buffs that happen when you engage or kill elites, so go from elite to elite. Right before you're engaging an elite, pop your Wolf Companion to gain that damage buff from the Wolf Companion, and to have Wolf Companion on cooldown in order to trigger the Sliver of Terror. Now, as for exactly what we want on every piece of gear, let's first talk about our breakpoints. 37% cooldown reduction is what we're aiming for. We get 10% from Paragon points. We get 15% from the Sliver of Terror, or any soul shard that you'll put in your helm. We get 20% from Captain Crimson's, and that should be all that we need to roll onto our gear. Now, while it's never a priority, if you can get as a secondary stat on your gear life per kill, that synergizes nicely with Shadow Power. Remember, your life per hit granted by Shadow Power is increased by your life per kill. Now, this is also why we'll ideally want as our potion the Bottomless Potion of Mutilation. Increases life per kill by 40 to 50,000 for 5 seconds. And you can actually snapshot this by activating Shadow Power while you have this potion active. So during those 5 seconds after popping the potion, in fact, what you're going to want to do, basically, once you load into game, first thing you do, once you load into a rift, because anytime you change zone, you have to do this again. So once you change zone, as in you go into a rift, or you go to the next level of a rift, you pop your potion, and then immediately pop Shadow Power, and that's going to snapshot your increased life per kill for the effects of Shadow Power until you hit Shadow Power again. But you don't need to hit Shadow Power again because it's permanently on thanks to the Shadow's Mantle. So that's the only extra little bit of homework to do when playing this build. Anytime you change zone, pop your potion, pop Shadow Power. Done. As for exactly what you want on every piece of gear, on our shoulders we'll take Dex, area damage, all resist, and then resource cost reduction because we don't need cooldown and resource cost will translate into more toughness thanks to Captain Crimson's. For our helm, dexterity crit chance impale damage. Amulet, fire crit crit. Chest, dex vitality all resist. Gloves, dex attack speed crit chance crit damage. Bracers, fire damage dex vitality crit chance. Belt, dex vitality all resist life. Pants, dex vitality all resist. Boots, dex vitality all resist impale damage. Both of our rings, crit chance, crit damage, raw damage. For your Carlay's point, poison damage, 10% damage, dexterity, attack speed. And our holy point shot, fire damage, dex, attack speed, crit chance, and impale damage. For our paragon points, max out your move speed, then dump everything into dexterity. Unless you feel you're a little too squishy, then you can put into vitality until you reach at least 600,000 life, or 800 if you want to actually maybe push a little higher. For offense, cooldown reduction, then crit chance and crit damage in a global 1-to-10 ratio across all your gear. Eventually though, by Paragon 800 you'll max both of these out. Attack speed is your last priority here. Defense, all resist armor, life regen. Utility, area damage, life per hit, pickup radius, and resource cost reduction. For your follower, we're going to take the Enchantress. We're going to give her the Hand of the Prophet token, which gives her access to every single skill. Meaning we're going to get cooldown reduction, elemental damage, reduced damage from ranged attacks, more armor, more attack speed, and a cheat death. Because we're not giving her the invulnerability token though, we need to help keep her alive. Because of that, we're giving her 2 legendary gems. The only 2 that work with followers. Esoteric Alteration, gain 60% non-physical damage reduction, and while below half-life, your resistances to cold, fire, lightning, poison, and arcane are increased by 75%. As well as the Mutilation Guard, gain 60% melee damage reduction, and while below 50% life, you may move through enemies unhindered. For her items, we're going to take the Flavor of Time. Pylon effects last twice as long, emanates to you. Nemesis Bracers, Shrine spawn an enemy champion, emanates to you. Emanate again meaning that it's as though you're wearing the item yourself. Oculus Ring. When an enemy dies, there's a chance that a golden pool will appear, stand in it, and deal 85% more damage. We're giving her a pig sticker simply because it's a stat stick. It rolls with more primary affixes than other weapons, and that's all we really care about. We don't care about the damage she's dealing, but we want to be able to stack more things on this to help keep her alive. We're going to give her Ice Climbers. Gain immunity to freeze and immobilize effects. Again, trying to keep her alive. Then we're giving her a Hellfire Ring, 2 pieces of canes, and a Leoric's Crown with a ruby in it to gain more XP. We're doing speedruns, we're grinding, we're farming. We'll get a little bit more XP from this. As for what stats to put on every piece of gear, intelligence is your primary focus. So topazes in chest, pants, amulet, all of her abilities scale off of intelligence, so that is your number 1 priority. Your number 2 priority is keeping her alive, so vitality, wherever you can get it. Life percent, wherever you can get it. Then armor, then all resist, then life per hit, then lastly attack speed. These are all important stats, but they're important in that order. So for her weapon gem, for instance, you're taking an amethyst to give her 28,000 life per hit. And that is going to wrap up this guide. But do stay tuned for the tier list video and more Diablo guides. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.